So today I'm going to be talking about the elephant in the room. So what do you think of when you think of New York City politics? Probably the fact that it's a blue state, right? And maybe that it gets a little red outside the bounds of the city, but New York City is generally blue, right? Well, you'd be surprised to learn that on Staten Island there was a rally of about 5,000 against the current influx of immigrants. There have also been an alarming number of anti-drag story hour protests in which people say things like pedophile and child groomer. These people were originally reserved white supremacists, but after COVID, or once COVID hit, they became anti-vax. And after COVID, they honed in on being anti-LGBTQ and anti-abortion. Not only are these protests hateful, but they're also dangerous. At one of the few anti-drag story hour counter protests I've been to, and this is why, the anti-drag story hour protesters were spitting at the counter protesters, they wore signage of swastikas, they hurled slurs at the counter protesters, and after the protest, they managed to grab, harass, and intimidate the counter protesters. While none of this hate was directed towards myself, I could feel the danger the drag queens were in. Now, this type of behavior isn't unexpected outside of New York City. However, according to the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, the states with the most anti-drag activity are California, Texas, Illinois, and New York. The resounding impact of such fervent hate is that minority groups, which shouldn't be the case in New York City, are becoming afraid again. Openly Gay Council member Eric Botcher had his house vandalized with the words pedo child groomer. At this time, the number of drag story hour readings have significantly decreased due to the readers being intimidated by such violent showings outside of their readings. Before such fervent extremism reaches fatal violence, something must be done to protect the blue state privileges of New York, such as being openly gay and expressive, and the right to abortion, and freedom of religion. But let's take a step back and look at the true expanse of such extremism across the country. During the overturning of Roe v. Wade in 2022, New York women clung to the reassurance provided by their blue state. As it stands, New York is a haven of progressive values, in stark contrast to more conservative states like Florida, where they've banned critical race theory and diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives and queer awareness in schools, and have granted extensive liberties to gun owners. Enter Christofascism, a term gaining traction in contemporary American politics. Coined by scholars Tom F. Driver and Paul F. Knitter, they describe Christofascism as a convergence of Christianity, specifically evangelicalism, and nationalism, into a political force seeking to shape social life and history. The goal is to establish a white nationalist state at the expense of cultural and religious diversity. Now, the distortion of Christianity isn't a new phenomenon, with roots reaching back centuries. From King Henry VIII's rewriting of the Bible to suit his political needs, to King James III's efforts to solidify political power through religious conformity, the bastardization of Christianity is not a new phenomenon. These instances highlight the manipulation of religious doctrine for political gain, laying the foundation for the emergence of modern-day Christofascism fueled by Christian nationalism. The consequences of the intertwining of religion and politics are far-reaching. It fosters an environment ripe for the spread of religious propaganda propagated through social media and fringe groups. As New Yorkers navigate the complexities of modern-day politics, we must remain steadfast against the encroachment by Christofascist ideals. By upholding values of diversity, equity, and inclusion, we can resist the oncoming tide of religious fascism and safeguard our blue state freedoms. Because it isn't just political ideals that are at risk, it's also the lives of citizens. From protesting drag queens in excessive hair and makeup reading picture books to children, to harassing abortion clinic goers, to doxing people, meaning posting people's personal information online with malicious intent, the Christofascist presence is on the rise. It must be treated like a mobile case of nationalist eugenics, where anyone who isn't white or is gay or isn't evangelical to any capacity shouldn't exist. It's extremely dangerous and divisive and must be stopped before there are more names on the news. I say all this to emphasize that really, Christofascism is hard to detect. It seems as though it's simple bigotry, but it has roots deeper than hate. Like I said earlier, the goal is to establish a white nationalist state with evangelicalism at the root. The first step to preventing the viral spread of Christofascism is internet literacy. Internet users must know how to laterally check their sources and spot disinformation. Being able to identify credible sources will protect internet users from the spread of Christofascism. In this climate of uncertainty, it's imperative that anti-fascists remain steadfast in their commitment to challenging Christo-fascist ideals. By upholding values of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and promoting inclusive policies, we as New Yorkers can resist the oncoming tide of Christo-fascism and keep our blue state liberty safe. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Oh.